Welcome in, Loons fans, to another edition of the Matchday Preview. Jonathan Harrison here, joined by a couple of guests today. Our normal co-host, Manny Lagos. Manny, how you doing today?
Good, sir. Good. Just was chatting with John about, a little bit brighter sun today after a nice bounce back game for the U.S. national team against Brazil.
Absolutely. It's always better to be podcasting after a good performance rather than the one we saw on Saturday. And we'll talk all about that in a little bit. But Jon Marthaler also joins us this week. John, how are we doing today?
I'm just glad. On Saturday, I was talking to Manny during the Colombia game, and he was next door to punching me, I would say. He was so frustrated. So this is, we're not in the same room. We're on Zoom here, but still better. Better just because Manny's not trying to jump through the screen and potentially strangle me.
I literally challenged John to find goalkeepers in the U.S. national team pipeline.
Matt Turner. As it turns out, my answer was Matt Turner.
Yeah.
It was a rough performance on Saturday, that's for sure. And we'll talk all about that. We'll talk about a little bit about the U.S. men's national team's 1-1 draw with Brazil this last week. We'll also recap a short week across Major League Soccer, and we'll make you guys pick your goals of the week instead of our producer Kyle picking them out after Manny's criticism last week. By the way, Kyle says he wants you to replicate John Tolkien's free kick from last week that you criticized. So good luck.
All right, we'll see what we can do. I mean, I certainly can replicate the goalkeeping on that play. I can do that one for you.
This will have to be a digital feature for sure, where Manny reenacts the kick to see if he can do it. And we'll recap the Dallas draw, and then look ahead to a Seattle game this coming weekend. So let's jump right into it. First of all, though, Manny, happy 53rd birthday this last Tuesday. It's been a couple of birthdays this last week for your family.
Yeah. The June is a big month for my father and I. Also, Tony Sana, June 1st. So we have a little bit of the soccer connection there, us Geminis. So, but yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. A lot of salt and pepper in the head now as you get older. Not that excited my birthday, but no, it was another good weekend, birthday-ish around time to have, and then let's get a tough point at home, which, we haven't had to say a lot this year, but we had to really fight to get that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump right into the goals this week. Hopefully you've had enough time to look through a couple goals that we've had to choose from for Major League Soccer or U.S. men's national team, if you wish. So John, I'll start with you. Your favorite goal from the weekend?
My favorite goal of the weekend was the first one the Minnesota United scored against Dallas, because rarely, if ever, have I seen a goal scored in Major League Soccer that made me say out loud, as that one did, just kick them out of the league. My goodness, that is terrible. So I always enjoy that kind of thing. It was Dallas trying to play out of the back and utterly failing to play out of the back. It looked like, we're talking about replicating things. Jonathan, if you and me tried to play out of the back against a Major League Soccer team, that's exactly the kind of thing that would have happened.
I told Dan this on the broadcast, and I don't think he understood what I said, because he's not on Twitter and he's not constantly online like us young folks are. But there's the account when playing out of the back goes wrong. They were feasting on this match this weekend. Yeah, there was a number of opportunities where Dallas almost gave away a couple goals, and we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, I know we're going to get into Dallas. Like, John, the thing for me was the goal, and then the rest of the half, it was the same playbook. They didn't adjust.
It's one thing when playing out of the back goes wrong. It's another thing when playing out of the back goes that wrong, and it takes a whole half before the other team starts going, this isn't working out. Yeah. Let's go long and let's start the play on the halfway line rather than 2 feet from our goalkeeper.
Yeah, but I know we're going to go to that game. I really like Boateng's finish. My brain goes to Pulisic's goal last night. It's got to be now that we wake up today. And, if anybody watched the game, it was a much more clever play than just kind of hitting it to that side of the wall. We had 2 different groups of guys run in ways that shielded Alisson from seeing the ball, which I loved. I thought it was actually a really well executed set piece. That area of the field sometimes is tough to get the ball up and over the wall. So for them to kind of try to decide to create the chaos right in front of Alisson, I thought was great. And if you really look at it, he does miss getting to jump on the ball because of that movement. So again, I thought it was we're going to bring up the Dallas game. Very similar to Dallas's goal, a very, very well executed set piece goal.
Yeah, I thought that was an excellent goal. As you said, the Dallas goal is up there. As much as Minnesota United fans might not like it, that was an excellently well taken set piece. I think for me, it's got to be the Boateng goal, just the cross, taking it on the volley, and what it meant for New England. Just obviously an awful season for them, and getting a win, a shock win over New York Red Bull side, who, yeah, we're probably missing a couple players, but they're still at the top of the Eastern Conference, and you get that win at home. Great meeting for them. Let's talk about the couple of U.S. men's national team results. Obviously, two very different results, two very different games, a 5-1 loss Saturday against Colombia, and then a 1-1 draw against Brazil last night. And there's a lot of questions surrounding what this team is heading into a vital Copa America based off of those two results and how differently those two teams looked. And it's really hard to figure out what this team will be after those two results, Manny.
Yeah, I just think it's good though, because they had a game where we had to be honest about being ready and sharp to play, and being tough defensively, and be ready to make that tough decision about when to play out of the back and when to press and squeeze and win battles and second balls. And Colombia just overwhelmed us. Even when we got in the big at 2-1, you'd think we'd make a game of it and see if we get a 2-2 tie, and they just took it up a gear, and we kept the mistakes going throughout the 90 minutes. So very happy and excited to see that group respond so well against a Brazilian team that maybe is a little bit down the last couple of years in terms of how they're playing and how they're dominating on the global scale. I always equate the Brazilian team to like our women's national team. It doesn't matter where they are. When they step on the field, they expect to be the best team in the world, play like it, and beat you like it. And really to go down 1-0 on kind of a soft goal and give up some chances but not break, and then really build into the game. We had some great patterns of play throughout that game. We had some great moments where we could have easily won the game. Tim Ream certainly stepped up and showed some leadership qualities that I think the team just needed to navigate that balance of when to keep the ball, when to move it, and when to just get our lines up. So really exciting at the end of the day. I mean, when I look at the scope of the two games, it's amazing how quickly you're frustrated, and then now you're excited to get our group going next week.
Yeah, I think you can come out of the Saturday game very frustrated and questioning where this team was and where they were headed over the next couple of years, very vital years for this team. And then after last night, you're left just excited for what this team can be with what they showed on the pitch last night against Brazil, John.
Yeah, international soccer is funny this way. I was talking to some friends last night and just remembering that Argentina won the World Cup last time around, but during the group stage, they lost and kind of got handled by Saudi Arabia. It's just, in international soccer, one game does not prove anything, but all these tournaments are set up so that one game can be definitive. And so you look and say, well, if that game against Colombia happened in the quarterfinal of the Copa America or something, we'd all remember it as a total failure, but it's just one game, and then they came back the next game and played a lot better. I don't want to sound too much like Eric Ramsey here and just talk about how you can't get too high or can't get too low, but the truth is that if you want to figure out which is the best international team, these teams would have to play a lot more and a lot more often to figure out who's actually the best, and that's just not going to happen. These tournaments tend to have high variance kind of outcomes. So even the friendlies after Colombia, we were all despondent and wondering if maybe the U.S. should just stop playing soccer entirely. And then against Brazil, it was like, oh yeah, wait a second. This team actually does have a lot of good players and can actually play a lot of good soccer.
Yeah, I was thinking one of my favorite plays of the game was early when Christian Pulisic just crushed the guy twice, actually. He should have gotten a yellow and he didn't, and that got under Brazil's skin. But just him kind of letting Brazil know, we were frustrated about our result against Colombia, and it's not going to be an easy night. It was hot. It was muggy in Orlando. Our guys were ready to fight and battle and also move the ball, which made them, work defensively. So there was a nice kind of physicality to start the game that we set a tone. And then I also think Brazil is still kind of finding their own defensive shape and structure. Like ultimately, we were outstanding, breaking their lines, but that's also a little bit on them. I think they started 3-6s, which was a little bit weird. And they're trying to figure a couple things out defensively, and we certainly exposed that. So John's right. You can't look too high or too low. But the fan in me was happy, and there's a lot of pride in that. Like, if we can combine some of the grit and belief that we had in past decades, we didn't maybe have the quality we have now. I think we're a very dangerous team on the global game, just because I think those two elements are amazing. I mean, we are at times have that history of grit. And if we can combine it with some of the quality we now have on that roster, it's exciting for these tournaments for the next couple of years.
Yeah,
Yeah, you try to not get too high or too low as commentating on it, but as a fan, if they play like that during Copa America, I'm going to be leading the march on U.S. Soccer headquarters, like, beating down, just zombie style, just beating down doors and burning things down, because that's the way it is when you're a fan.
Absolutely. Let's jump right into this preview or this review of the Dallas 1-1 draw. General thoughts. I think we started to get into them a little bit. I know the general thought among a lot of people watching that game is that was one of the more boring games of soccer they've ever seen, just based on how it was played. And I think in parts they're right. I think Minnesota had a very good performance considering what they had to deal with missing so many players and going up against a nearly full squad. I mean, that's as good of a squad as Dallas can put out on the week in and week out. And Minnesota handled the task really well, I thought. For me, I thought it was a very good performance based off of the situation and circumstances they were facing, Manny.
Yeah, I mean, really, probably for us in terms of the quality of balanced play, it was a tale of two halves. Outstanding first half. Like, I mean, again, the guys that were plugged in and expected to do roles, embraced and did their roles so well. You had Sang Bin at right wing back and Caden Clark. I mean, defensively, they were outstanding for, saying 90 minutes. Caden about 80 minutes. And then you just had a nice balance where I thought our structure and our ability to defend well and then get forward and get chances really was probably unlucky that we weren't up at half. And again, it took a great goal by Dallas to probably be even at half. And so that first half, it was somewhat of a fluke, if you want to say that they were trying to play out of the back. But that also was just, we had a great balance and structure about how we were pressing, closing. We didn't create a ton of chances, and we were probably a little worried about where the goals could come from. But ultimately, I was really impressed with how we took them in the first half. And we kind of, a little bit like the U.S. last night, we let them know this was not going to be a cakewalk game with so many starters out. And again, I thought Dallas never really recovered from how well we played in that first half, and couldn't quite get a tempo to win the game. They certainly got a tying goal, but yeah. So I think for me, tale of two halves in terms of the balance. And I really enjoyed Asani's goal and enjoyed his 90 minutes. Actually, he and Will were great in the middle. Although they provided the leadership for some of these young guys to come in and make an impact.
John, your general thoughts?
I think going into the game, I wrote as much as anybody about how many guys they were missing, and they were basically playing with half a team. But my feeling sort of at the end of the game was it's a little disappointing Minnesota didn't try to push on and win this a little bit, because I think they could have. Everybody was real happy with a single point after the game, and I think that's fair if you look at the lineup you're playing and you look at the bench you have. But at the same time, I don't want to be too insulting to Dallas, but they fired their coach this week, so I think they agree with me if I'm going to be insulting about FC Dallas. They were pretty bad, and I'm not going to say it's 2 points dropped or anything, but I think that's a game that Minnesota could have won, and maybe based on that first half performance, should have won.
Yeah, I think
it's a tough call. I think you're bringing up tactically in the second half. I think Eric decided to be very, very pragmatic. He really said, you know what, I've got a lot of young guys coming in. I want to get them good minutes. I want to make them feel like they're a part of something special. And it is weird at home maybe to like have that feeling where, you'd like almost always in the second half to go for it. But I'd also say it just shows how thin we were, not only come from the numbers, but the opportunities tactically to go ahead and get that win without exposing yourself to probably losing and dropping the point. It probably was where he had to make a big decision. And there's no doubt he made a decision to be pragmatic. And it doesn't always happen at home, but you know what? At the end of the day, I think that Eric's been making some great decisions. And ultimately there was 4 Minnesotans that walked off the field as young men who got to say we contributed to a huge point for Minnesota United. So I see where you're coming from, and I got that vibe, and I think you just talked about Jonathan about the it being kind of boring. Well, yeah, I being honest, soccer sometimes is a tactical chess match and can be boring. I think it leads to like special things though within a game, and then it leads to exciting moments maybe in other games because sometimes that's the way it is. It's not what you expect.
I'm just want to clarify. I didn't think it was boring. I thought it was a fun match. I thought
No, I get what you're saying. I get what.
Yeah.
No, there's no doubt. In one sense, that was there were not a lot of chances created in that game. There wasn't a lot of hunger to go forward or be brave and take risks or open up the game on either team, frankly. And I think to John's point, the next day there wasn't enough of an identity of Dallas showing anything over the last couple of months and hunger and fight against a team that was without a lot of key players that they made a coaching change the next day. So I think the vibe is correct. I mean, it wasn't the most exciting night at Allianz Field from a macro sense.
For sure.
From Dallas's perspective, you got to look at that game and go, all right, so you're playing a team that's missing half its team, and the only offensive idea they had was to pass the ball back and forth between the center backs 4,000 times and then try to kick it long over the top at a guy who had completing 0% of those long balls, by the way, except for one where Michael Boxall screwed up and Victor Eriksson had him come back and make a recovery run. But besides that, no plan whatsoever. If I had been Dallas's ownership, I would have been like, you know what? It's probably time for something different after this.
Yeah, that was the key sticking point for us, for Dan and I in the broadcast booth, was just the lack of creativity, it felt like, from Dallas throughout the night. It just felt like they had one game plan and that's what they were going to go with. And Minnesota, to their credit, played well enough to force them into that game plan time and time again, not giving them much space in the middle, really kind of just bunkering in and closing off any access through the middle and forcing them to go over the top. And the back line really stood tall and really played well. And I think that was going into the match. I think there was a lot of questions, knowing that Victor Eriksson had some shaky performances for MNUFC and MNUFC 2 over the past couple months, and he really shined. I thought he had a really good performance, and I liked Eric Ramsey's comments in the post-game press conference where they were just looking to get him a steady performance, and that's exactly what they got. And I think that you can build on that, man. You can have a young kid build upon that kind of performance. It wasn't anything flashy. He had the one big play where he kind of had to make a big tackle in the box on Jesus Ferreira, but other than that, it was a really steady performance. Didn't make any big mistakes and just was calm on the night, it felt like.
Yeah, I think looked much more comfortable. I think the last game he played was Philadelphia away, which was a tough minutes for him because it was just like felt like he was just kind of thrown in there and trying to breathe. Even for him, it seemed like it was a tough mode. But I really enjoyed the game saving tackle because that's so hard, particularly for a player like him who is physical is what he does. He's gonna bumpy. He's gonna kind of try to use his kind of size and his thickness to like disrupt an offensive player, and to do that in a way where he doesn't foul him for a PK, I thought was outstanding. I also would say it's a little bit shocking for a national team player level who's scored so many goals for the national team that you can see his current form is really low right now, and his energy levels seem to be a little bit lost. But it really was nice to have Victor come in, give some physicality, and be a steady presence throughout the game. And like a lot of guys, defensively get better throughout the game and get more comfortable, which is what you were talking about, which is like, it's a big feeling for him. It must be to know they can go 90 minutes and help the team and contribute.
Yeah, I thought it was an overall excellent performance from the defense in some tough circumstances for sure. But as you said, John, just a lack of creativity from Dallas, just going over the top time and time again. And probably rightfully so, according to many Dallas fans that I've seen over the past couple of days. They move on from their head coach after a performance that they had all the pressure on them, for sure. They came into this game knowing they had a full strength squad. Minnesota did not. They needed the points. Minnesota had a couple games in hand on the team above them. They were looking I think, Manny, you and I and Dan said this on the broadcast before the match, that this was a win-win for Minnesota. If you lose, you're expected to lose based off how many people you're missing. But if you get a point or a win, then absolutely it's a big win for the club based off of what was going on and the circumstances. But overall, this performance from Dallas was very disheartening, I'm sure, for Dallas fans, and the Loons will see them in a couple days' time next Wednesday before we talk again. So this will be a match that will be very different then because of all the new players that Minnesota will have back then, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But
Hey,
overall,
just to give one nice thing for Dallas here, I thought the execution on their goal was outstanding.
yeah.
I mean, it really, you have these moments where
you could see them try that on the corner kick prior too.
Yes.
They were trying to line that up.
Yeah, and they really it both the execution of seeing where we were leaving space, and then the execution of technically of two really good passes had to be completed at a certain tempo, and then a finish that was just outstanding. It was again, I thought it was one of the better executed set piece goals against us in a long time, just in terms of just them seeing a space that was open and getting the ball to that space so quickly and efficiently, and for the guy to finish was outstanding.
I do have to say, great finish by Liam Fraser. It was the first goal he scored as an adult, basically.
Yeah, right.
So you do have to look at SC Dallas and go, all right, great play, great setup, great set piece. Why are you setting up a guy who's never scored a goal in his life to try to take that?
Also, where was the creativity from that corner kick, the set piece that you developed and you clearly had worked on? And where was the creativity in the rest of the attack? I mean, you feel like that if you had that, there'd be a bit of a better performance.
You can just imagine SC Dallas training for a week that it's just nothing but Liam Fraser taking shots from outside the penalty. There's 50. They're on the training ground. There's 53 soccer balls over a fence, and there's one that hit a light. And no, we're going to work on this, guys. This is what we're going to do this week.
It was an excellently taken goal for sure, and one that I'm sure Liam Fraser will never forget, based off of, as you said, I
hope he got the ball. Like, did he go and get the ball, and did they take it out of play?
I don't remember.
This might be the only goal he ever scores in MLS. This is like his 75th game or something like that. Get the ball, do something, stop the game. Let's have a ceremony.
That what happens? They get their first ball, like kind of MLB players get their first hit or their home run.
Usually, you get the ball if it's your first MLS score, or one of the game balls. Usually, you do. So there is,
Interesting. Didn't know that. Now I do. Let's talk about some of these new guys who made their appearances this week. As you said, Manny, 4 Minnesota players on Minnesota natives on at once, which is clearly, I think, a club record in their MLS era. An exciting moment for obviously the academy and MNUFC 2 and the development of some of these guys to bring on. Obviously, wouldn't happen if we didn't play during international breaks, but we talked about that last week. But a big moment for some of these kids, Manny.
Yeah, it really was, and they're real minutes to see out a game, either get 1 or 3 points, or really kind of see how we were going to finish that game out. So I thought, like I mentioned, Caden and Sang really embraced their defensive role really well. Again, I knew it was going to be a little bit tough to figure out how we're going to get numbers forward, just based on wanting to make sure we felt settled defensively for most of the game. I really enjoyed. Cage had one great pass that almost went through, which is one of his skill sets, is he does see breaking lines really well. And he saw something a lot of players in the field don't see, and he almost put Bongi through for our best chance, probably after Fraga went out of the game. By the way, I think Fraga was my man of the match for this game.
Yep.
I thought it was one of his better performances. He really connected the lines well. He broke well. I think when he left the game, it kind of tilted to us maybe not getting out as much offensively and really, I don't want to say bunkering down, but just, kind of playing in the middle of the field more than in Dallas half.
I think Fraga had a lot of freedom. I think that's what we have in the notes, that he just had a lot of freedom. He was popping up in dangerous spots. He wasn't really just confined to the wings. There was a number of times where he was just finding these little pockets of areas in front of that Dallas defense and just creating dangerous opportunities when Minnesota did have the ball. I agree with you, Manny, that he was probably the man of the match. Didn't obviously get on the score sheet, so wasn't going to win the voting on that. But for me, John, he was excellent on the night. He was one of the prime players for Minnesota.
Yeah, I think this setup with where Minnesota United's playing with wingbacks rather than needing the wide forwards to sort of provide some of that width sometimes, I think that really works to the things that Franco Fragapane is good at this point of his career. I think that he's one of those guys that has really helped in the forward sense, not just the guys who really fit in well as wingbacks, like maybe Caden Clark or Josef Rosales. But I think this frees a guy like Fragapane to do some more things that he's good at, and less, chalk on his boots running down the line.
Agree.
he was,
yeah, very much so. I think John's spot on there. He really likes to come inside, find those holes underneath the forwards, not just be a winger.
Yeah, he's had a couple of moments this season where he's been excellent doing that role where he's cutting inside and finding these dangerous areas. Clint Irwin making his first start of the season for MNUFC. Obviously gave up the goal to Liam Frazier. There was going to be very few people who could stop that one based off the curling effort that Frazier put in. But overall, made a couple of big saves, especially in the second half, had to come up big a number of times. And that's good to see because he'll be the club's goalkeeper for a couple of weeks here while Dane's off with Canada at the Copa America. Manny.
Yeah, that save off the header, off the line was the technique to get down low and not just parry it, but parry it wide where there's not a second chance or it doesn't go in the goal. And then I think Ariola had the chance right after that where he kind of volleyed into the ground that almost went over his head and he got the flick. I just love the save off the header. That's so hard to do technically for a goalie. Just really high quality kind of technical ability there and sharpness.
And then one of the other new guys into the lineup this week, Jordan Adebayo-Smith. I know the reaction to his game has been a little bit mixed in the attack. There was some questions about where he was placed, but I think when he was playing that high pressing role, the trying to hassle the back line for Dallas, John, he played excellently. He did that really well, was a big part in causing the troubles for FC Dallas while they were trying to play out of the back that we talked about earlier on in the first half. I thought he was excellent in that role. Obviously, he'd want a little bit more in the attacking sense, but overall, I think he had a decent game for what he was asked to do.
Yeah, I think especially given the way the Minnesota set up in terms of those pressing triggers of when they're trying to play it out of the back, and you can see the haunted look in their goalkeeper's eyes as he's trying to do that. I think that is where Jordan Adebayo-Smith was probably better placed. In terms of the attack overall, you sort of look at it and go, well, you almost look at it and go, maybe I would have liked to see 60 minutes of Patrick Weah and 30 minutes of Jordan Adebayo-Smith given the attack. But I think you're absolutely right that if you're going to play in the way that Minnesota did, I think Adebayo-Smith was a much better fit for that role.
Just because the Loons are away doesn't mean you have to watch the match from home. With Loons Watch Spots presented by Coors Light, you can find a piece of that Allianz Field atmosphere at some of your favorite Twin Cities locations. Check out the full list of locations and upcoming watch parties at mnufc.com/Loons Watch Spots. So overall, Minnesota get a draw on the night, a 1-1 draw. And I guess the question is, and we have this in the document as well, the rundown here, Minnesota giving up 63% of the possession to Dallas, and it is a trend for Minnesota where they've given up a lot of possession to other teams recently. They only had 35% of the possession on Saturday night. Before that, it was 46, 44, 26 against Colorado. They've given up a lot of possession lately, and sure, they're still collecting their points. They're still sitting at the top of the Western Conference, and I know possession isn't everything in soccer, but it does allow you obviously to play with the ball and have those and create those dangerous chances more often than not. Is this a concerted effort by the Loons, Manny, or is this just kind of what they've been dealing with as they've had to rotate bodies over the past couple of weeks?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that if you're looking at where the possession occurs and the danger of it, I think LAFC they went at us. They had possession in good spots and really kind of came at us really hard. I think Colorado as well is a game we'd like to have back and really would have liked to have more possession, particularly with getting a 2-goal lead. That's an area where I think we would have probably said, okay, we probably should have possessed the ball a bit more. But a lot of this is a credit to our defensive shape and structure and then us getting a lead. And then us ability to now kind of go into a little bit more defending counterattack mode at certain points. It certainly depends on the game. I think this game is different in Colorado. I thought we did the first half as good as he could, considering Dallas decided to try to play out of the back, and we were really ready to deal with that kind of tactical kind of game planning by them. And so, to Jon's point, allowing the center backs who aren't the best passers to kind of dictate the game was a great. I mean, that's a lot of what I call dead possession. That's a lot of like, thank you very much. Then when we're ready to press and squeeze, Jon mentioned the triggers. We're ready to go, win the ball, good spots. Jordan, I thought, his smoothness and kind of like, he kind of has a nice little tempo about, he doesn't look like he's running fast, but he is. I kind of like that. And so, again, I think it's a little bit of both. And then again, this game, I think Eric's trying to be pragmatic at times, which means we're going to probably maybe get some possession to make sure we keep our structure and our shape. And I think we'll evolve. I think the team's going to evolve and not say this is our system for the rest of the year and we're going to play just like this. I think the team is still going to evolve to decide to dictate the game with possession at times, and we're going to need to. But again, I think particularly the last couple of games, we've gotten good leads where we frankly have. It's okay to have the ball in front of us and watch them pass it.
Yeah, I think for me that the recent trend of giving up a lot of possession doesn't concern me too much based off how this team has adapted to different opponents week in and week out, and how Eric Ramsey has set this team up with different players and different ways of playing, Jon. I think this is just kind of how they've had to play and how they've adapted to their opponents instead of just being more of what they will be in the future.
Yeah, from being able to quiz Eric Ramsey about this kind of thing, without making any comments on what they should be doing, I can tell you that Eric Ramsey basically doesn't care at all about the amount of possession that his team has. Yeah. I think if you looked at the numbers for the FC Dallas game, where you say, all right, Minnesota had 35% of the possession and Dallas completed 715 passes or whatever, but 650 of them were between the two center backs. You know what I mean? I think that's exactly what Eric Ramsey would like to see. He has mentioned that the Colorado game, which we referenced, was kind of an outlier. Like, all right, that is too far. That is too far down the dial. If you're going to turn the dial between possession and defending, that's too far. They don't want to play like that. But in terms of just looking at the pure possession numbers, or even at the number of completed passes, they don't want to play like Colorado, where they completed 102 passes for the whole game or whatever. But at the same time, looking at the way they played against Dallas, I think that is the way that they want to play. And I don't think you're ever going to see Eric Ramsey talking about, well, we really want to make sure that we complete 300, 400, 500 passes. He specifically said, I don't think we need to complete 1,000 passes to win a game. This is the way that Minnesota wants to play. They want to play not defensively, but they want to be defensively sound and win games that way. And what Ramsey always says is that you can control games without having possession. You can control the game out of possession. That's what you saw against Dallas, partially, I think, because Dallas had no ideas of any kind, but partially because Minnesota just said, all right, go over the top. That's fine. You kick the ball between your center backs 15 times and then send a 75-yard pass down the field. That's fine with us. We can play that way. We'll play that way if you want to play that way.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think part of you get excited about is there was changes, a lot of changes. And there's guys that came in and embraced that value system to a point where we were good in a lot of areas of the field, particularly, our defensive shape and how we kind of pressed out of that and the triggers out of that and creating chances. So again, I go back to the first half. The second half, it became a little bit different tactical kind of game, but couldn't agree more, Jon. I think you're right about that on all ends. And ultimately, I think it's important to remember the Colorado game because we do have to, at times, navigate how we're going to keep the ball a bit more in good spots and not let the other team keep the ball in good spots is super important.
So then go ahead.
I think what Minnesota needs to do, let's just see how far this goes. Instead, if they have another game where they're missing more than half a team, instead of, let's have Michael Boxall run the defense, put Manny in at center back. Let's see how far this system can go.
Didn't you just say
trouble,
that's
Jon,
fine?
I did trouble. Yeah.
Jon, didn't you just make the
15
argument?
seconds.
Yeah, no. I want at least to have, they had 4 Minnesotans on the field. Let's get 11 Minnesotans on the field. And if one of them has to be you, Manny, and one of them has to be you, Jonathan, that's fine. Let's see what we can do. Minnesota Spocker Spotlight, this is going to be the best that they can do.
Didn't you say 30 minutes ago that Dallas's goal would have been something similar had you and I been, or the goal that Dallas allowed been something similar if you and I were on the field?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying, I will say this. If they're going to do this and they put us on the field, we shouldn't try to play it out of the back. I'll tell you that right now.
Get the ball away from me as quick as possible.
Go long.
Get it into a real soccer player's feet as quick as possible.
Kick it to someone who played soccer. That's good. That's really the first thing. Let's
All
see
right,
what
so-
Eric Ramsey can do with those kind of restrictions. How good of a coach is he really?
This is why we need the media game, so he can coach us and see what happens.
Oh, that'd be pure gold, to be honest. I think that's good. I think we should make that happen for sure.
The last time they had a media game, somebody almost died. So maybe let's stay away from that.
Yeah, I think the comment about the possession is always a good debate, and it should be. I mean, because it's ultimately the uniqueness of soccer. But I also go back to you mentioned the 4 players in the field, and Patrick Ware really had to come in at a tough time and really try to find the balance of helping the team defend and get forward. And I think he did it valiantly. He really was ready to do it. And Devin Padelford, once again, has been just a breath of fresh air this year. He seems to every game get more and more comfortable on the ball. So we're talking about possession. I think the Colorado good game is a good example. He still was kind of finding his feet in terms of like taking a deep breath and making a good decision on the ball or a good first touch to get out of a tough spot. I thought he did an outstanding job of that. His first touch in this game was outstanding. He really seems to kind of continue a nice rise in terms of entry level into becoming a potential starter in the future for the club.
So I've got a question for both of you guys then off of Devin Padelford and how he's played this season at both wingback, fullback, and center back. I know he's primarily come up as a fullback or a wingback, but he's shown excellently at that center back position this season. What is his best position, Manny? Has it changed for you?
I think I'm gonna, say I don't think we should answer that yet. I mean, you guys can. I want to wait because ultimately, I think Devin, he played against my son a lot in youth soccer, and he was kind of like a left winger. I've got a little of a soft spot. Devin and I both grew up playing basketball. We were both point guards. So he's got this great athleticism. I think he's a great 1v1 defender, which lends well to all 3 of those positions, ironically, because sometimes you just got to say, hey, shut this guy down. I think it really depends on the development of his technical and tactical acumen about what position he ends up in the end. I mean, I could certainly see him if he technically grows and tactically, he could even become a little more offensive force. He actually has a pretty good 1v1 side to him because he did play left winger, but he's also embraced, kind of the athletically shutting down a guy, as that bodes well for a left center back, or even a left back if you go back to a back 4. So I'm gonna, pull a one and say I want to wait. I can't answer yet. No, I'm not answering. Not gonna.
All right, John, you're on the spot. Then
First of all, I do have to. It's hilarious that, like in April, I remember talking to Devin Padelford, and then the questions are like, did you drive yourself here or did someone else drive you here? You're so young. And then this week it was like, Devin, what's it like to be a veteran presence on this back line? You've played 8 games. How are you being a leader for the rest of the back line? It's amazing how that has changed in 2 months. I think right now, Padelford has said that he liked playing left wing back and being able to bomb forward. So there's clearly that. But I think the way he's playing left center back in a back 3 is kind of perfect, especially where Minnesota sometimes overlaps those center backs. I think that he probably uses his strengths, his right now today's strengths, to their fullest extent, maybe more than playing left wing back in a back 5 would, or, at the center of a back 3 would.
By the way, and I know we talked about it last week, I love this tactical wrinkle of having your outside center backs, or even sometimes Michael Boxall, who tends to be the center of those 3, make these overlapping runs where you don't normally see your center backs make those. But I love that it adds a new wrinkle, adds a new dangerous weapon, I guess, for the opposing defense to try and shut down. Because as we saw a couple of years ago when Michael Boxall did it repeatedly to San Jose, he's good at that. He can find ways to get in the attack and create those chances. But you also have Arriaga, who's naturally a midfielder, able to do that and get into dangerous spots, as you saw a couple weeks ago. And then Padelford, who's naturally a wingback, obviously has the tactical talents and the natural ability to do that as well. I like this new tactical wrinkle that we've seen. John?
I haven't asked him, but I really get the strong sense looking at him on the field that what Michael Boxall wants is maybe 25 minutes at striker in some game. you see him, he's almost looking longingly. Like if he happens to get trapped up the field after a corner or something, he's sort of looking around like, guys, play it to me in the middle of the field. He desperately wants to slalom through three guys and put one in the top corner. I can just sense it.
It's also really fun to when he starts going vertical because he's dribbling like, let me find some contact. And
Yeah,
I think defenders are like, uh-oh. And they kind of are almost like, is he really like
I'd
running?
like to dribble past this guy, but more than that, I would like to run him over.
And I think that throws defenders for a loop. They're like, wait, am I going to get down low and tackle this guy? I'm not sure if I want to do that. So yeah, I would say, the value of the back five allows, I would say it's like a 3+1 where you have your cover, and then it can have different guys going forward in different ways to make sure you're encouraging that, but you also have, when the game opens up, because you are going to put numbers into that box, that you have cover to deal with the transition of the other team. And it certainly feels like we have the freedom of doing that. And that overlap by Arriaga is another one that accentuates that our center backs right now are feeling really good about that cover, or else they wouldn't do that. And then Arriaga, you mentioned it. He actually got a goal against Bermuda. So he's got his goal scoring boots on now. I think he played in the midfield in that game, but that's 2 goals in 2 games for him, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, and he's certainly earned it with how well he's played this season. Before we move on and look forward, any final thoughts off this 1-1 draw from either of you guys?
I hope to forget it fairly soon.
Anything to follow up on that?
I think that's the fan coming out in John, which is fair.
Sorry.
No,
what was I? What?
No, it's I got it. He does not want to relive that second half. Mine is just we have our positives, especially this year, the special nights of Allianz Field, that it's usually based on how well we've played and a great win and people sing Wonderwall. I do think, our fans and the nuanced part of the game is coming out where, it was a special night because the game wasn't special, but there was moments and people that got minutes, and we had a coach that we got to see navigate in real time some adversity throughout the week leading up to the game, and it ended up in a positive way, which is fun. I mean, it's just like I said, there's a detailed part of my watching this team grow and evolve, and this doesn't get the highlights of the season, but it's certainly for some individuals, it's their highlight, which is so important, I think, for this group going forward.
So then that leads me into the preview segment of the show, because we'll have the game against Dallas, down in Dallas, before we talk again on this podcast. And obviously we mentioned that they've fired their head coach, Nico Estevez. It's new interim coach there. Minnesota will have a number of their key contributors back from international break, so things will be very different. I think I go into that match very confident based off of what we saw on Saturday, knowing that Dallas is in a little bit of turmoil, and Minnesota will be getting a number of their starters back, and they just went 1-1 without those starters, Manny.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a cloud of trying to answer this because I'm still thinking about how we've never won in Seattle, which is where I have to start. And it really is an opportunity to go there and play a complete game and get some points. And my view would be that I hope we embrace that, because it's been tough. That's been a tough place for us to play, a tough place for us to find results. I know we're going to go detail in the game, but that's just where I start. Is like, I would really want us to get a result in Seattle.
Yeah, I didn't want to dwell on the FC Dallas game too much. Just wanted to get that question out. But yeah, this Seattle game is interesting. They'll obviously be celebrating I think it's their 50th anniversary is what they're celebrating on Saturday. So they'll have a number of club legends out there. So it'll be an interesting atmosphere for the Loons to get into. But as you said, Loons have never won there. Obviously, there's still the heartache from the Western Conference final a couple years ago that will sit strong in Loons fans' minds for a very long time. But this is a Seattle side that has struggled a lot this season. 10th place in the Western Conference, only 1 win at Lumen Field this season, which is the surprising number. They've usually been pretty good there, especially against Minnesota United, but they have really struggled at home this season. And it's interesting to see some of these other numbers for them. 20 goals scored, 21 goals allowed. But you look at their XG, it's, I think, 22.6 expected goals, 21.1 expected goals allowed this season. So it's kind of right around where they should be, is what they're actually performing to this season. and they're not getting a whole lot from their attackers, which you normally would expect this season. Sure, Raul Ruidiaz has scored 7 goals, but he hasn't scored in a month's time. So it's been a little bit interesting to see what this Seattle side is. And I guess just general thoughts going into that one, Manny. You said that the Loons should embrace this challenge of getting their first points out of Seattle. John, what about you? General thoughts going into a big match for the Loons this weekend?
Well, we wished Manny a happy 53rd birthday. We also have to wish Raul Ruidiaz a happy 53rd birthday. He turned 53 this week too. No, Seattle is so funny. You mentioned the XG numbers for Seattle. Seattle is sort of the quintessential good team that always finds a way to lose this week. Chiefly, they get somebody sent off in every game. I don't know how it's possible, but
7 yellow cards in 17 games, or 7 red cards, excuse me, in 17
7
games. That's
guys
incredible.
sent off in 17 games is like if you made the team out of 11 Roy Keanes and put them in today's soccer game. Like Roy Keane, 1998, going around just stabbing guys with a knife that he was holding, and then put it in today's game. Those are the numbers I would expect. I would expect Roy Keane to get sent off. A team of 11 Roy Keanes that have 7 red cards in 17 games. It's just impossible. So it's, immovable force, irresistible force, immovable object kind of thing. You've got Seattle who can't find a way to win, but Minnesota going to Seattle. Not only have they never won there, they've never gotten a point there. I think they're 0 for 8 in terms of getting a point. Am I right about that? Yeah. So that's what's going to happen. You said they're celebrating their 50th anniversary, club legends. Brian Schmetzer has been there for about all 50 years. If they lose at home to Minnesota, maybe Brian Schmetzer gets fired as part of the festivities. I don't know what happens there.
Well, I think I didn't know that number, guys, about the stat about the red cards. I mean, that's there's some red flags there in terms of the discipline and really, again, you got to figure out in this league how to find points and win games. And that amount of red cards in that little amount of games is going to set you up for not getting a good points per game or seeing out where you want to try to get going and get a good result. So I think they had a good result in Philadelphia. That might have been a long time ago, but I thought that was a good one. Ruidiaz had an amazing goal in that game. For me, it's just an exciting game because I think we've got through a tough week of international break. I think they are still struggling to see their identity. I think they're struggling to figure out what their lineup is. I think they're struggling to figure out what their system is. So everything there is lens for us to on paper do well. But like I said, this is a tough place for us to play. It just has been. We've found so many spectacular ways to drop points here that I'm more probably nervous than I had been for a away game in a long time, because I think the expectations are for us to finally, show our fans we can get a result there. And I feel good about it though, because of the work we did last weekend and how we've been playing the last couple of weeks. It's such a great opportunity to really kind of put our foot on, play well defensively, get guys forward and get chances and get a win.
I think a couple of years ago, before the Loons had gotten their one and only win against Seattle, I started the pre-match show with the stat that the Loons, because Seattle in this history between these two teams have gotten the better of Minnesota United time and time again since the Loons joined MLS. And I think I had a stat, if I'm remembering correctly, the last time the Loons had won before that game in 2021 where they won 1-0, the last time the Loons beat Seattle was when they were both in, I can't remember the name of the league, but they were both in the same league together. Manny, you were coaching that game, I believe.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was gonna even skip me and go to the Schmetzer Buzz Lagos era. Would have been some good results for sure. But yeah, we back in the second division, we've had a little bit more competitiveness against Seattle, and it's a credit to Seattle, by the way. I think we talk about it. We should really, their entrance into MLS and their kind of what they've built there has been outstanding. So this is a very unique situation for them where they're really trying to figure out how do they get back to something that they've been so dominant at home and they've had an expectation, although I haven't won as many trophies, I think, as people realize, but they've been really solid and they've been a playoff team since they went into MLS. So they're in a unique situation where a little bit like Kansas City last year, we're like, this time of year is like, are we going to be done and dusted, or are we going to pick ourselves up and show what we're made of from the past? So I like that. I think the Buzz Lagos era, maybe we need to get those vibes and get that going.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while and the Loons need to, this is a key match for them. And let's put it this way. The last time Seattle celebrated something against or at their home, they ended up losing that game. So maybe the Loons can kind of take advantage of this situation again, like Portland did last year or a couple years ago when when Seattle was celebrating CONCACAF Champions League win. It does bring up an interesting, their current run of form where they lost 2-1 against a Sporting Kansas City side that we saw a couple weeks ago, just hasn't looked that great this season. The game winner scored after their 7th red card of the season. Reed Baker-Whiting will not be involved in this match this weekend. The young defender will not be allowed to play because of that red card. But it's brought up a lot of questions in Seattle about how they turn this form around. And Schmetzer had some interesting comments that we know that they like to play a certain style, but he admitted that this is the time of the year and how they've been playing and needing to bust out of this slump. They're looking at different players. They're looking at different personnel and formations that they normally haven't looked at. And that, I think that leads to some interesting combinations that they could go with this weekend. And that's intriguing to see what they'll do, to see how they break out of this slump, Manny.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if that involves, some of their kind of traditional starters offensively, particularly like Jordan Morris or Rudy Diaz, that, offensively they're just a handful.
Yeah.
One's crazy fast and has a great way of breaking lines in between the shoulder defender, making runs. And obviously Rudy Diaz is one of those guys who can, hide in a game for large parts of the game. And then he just shows up hitting a bomb or making a near post run and flicking a ball in the goal. So it reminds me a little bit of when we played Kansas City at home, in terms of, we don't know what kind of lineup's going to show up. We don't kind of know what kind of system's going to show up. And they're definitely desperate for some home points. And so it's a little bit, gets me excited too, because I don't think Eric is thinking about that. We are, because we're on the show and it's fun to do. I think Eric is really set a tone with this club. Is like he's clearly preparing the way he can and about Seattle, what they do. But he also really sends a message to our guys that he really wants to care about what we're doing, the qualities, the habits we get in the field. That's the baseline. And that's the value system he's going to go into this game. And so I think from his mind, he's not caring about much which system or players that they play. But certainly I think it's really fascinating if you're a Seattle Sounder fan or if you're a fan of Minnesota United going into this game, because it's hard to predict lineup, system, and really what Schmetzer's thinking and how he's going to tackle the approach playing against us.
Yeah, hopefully that involves Jordan Morris not being on the field. So, but it's not going to, because he scored 3 goals in his last 5 games. But still, be nice to not see Jordan Morris just blazing past everybody like he did against Sporting Kansas City. As you said, nice run off the back shoulder of the defender on that one, and that's what he does time and time again. Has done throughout his career. He's one of the more difficult players to stop this season. They've had a number of guys who have been key for them throughout the years. Raul Diaz just not performing recently, anyways, in the last month, as I said, goalless in the last month. But one of the key players that has popped up, young 18-year-old Obed Vargas. This kid has been on a fast rise throughout that Seattle system. I mean, I know the news is out this week that he's made the one-time switch to play for Mexico, which is disappointment for U.S. men's national team fans, but he's been instrumental for them in how they play this season, John.
Yeah, if there was ever a time in which dual nationals would look and go, I think I probably am going to get more playing time with Mexico than I am with the U.S. national team. Now's the time. So I don't think you can really blame Obed Vargas from going, I think I see a potential for some minutes on the other side of this switch here. So
especially as an 18-year-old.
I know. We're talking about Cage Mansion so much, and he's 19. Like, oh my gosh, this guy's so young. I can't believe he looks like he looks like a child. Obed Vargas has played like 25 games already for Seattle, and he's 18. He started playing when he was 16. Seattle has, they have this weird thing where they've got all these veterans and all these well-known names like Rudy Diaz, and Jordan Morris is not that old, but he's been there forever. And then they've just got this crop of like 17-year-olds that they're putting in the middle of the field, and it's fine. I don't quite understand it.
They're in that interesting spot where they've got a number of key veterans that have brought them a ton of success, but they've also got, as you said, this crop of young kids that are trying to break through. And obviously one of them they're trying to figure out how to transition to that young core of players, Manny.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough balance. Like I said, they put a lot of energy and time into their academy, and they've really pushed some guys through with minutes. And that balance of making sure you're still having your identity of winning games and growing into like winning in the moment while preparing for the future is unique and it's tough. And I mean, I think we're in a good space right now where we're thinking about that ourselves. And I think this year how we've handled it has been outstanding. So for me, it's interesting. I think he just seems like a great young talent. Some drama, Mexico versus US. A great story. I actually do have for you guys his midfield partner, João Paulo.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the stat, but I feel like he always has scored a bomb against us.
Oh yeah.
Every time we play. And I don't know if he does that the rest of the league, but that's one thing I would like not to have a João Paulo crushed shot on Saturday.
A 45-yard strike.
Yeah, just
I mean, every year it's the goal of the year somehow.
Yeah, somehow it's the Minnesota Seattle João Paulo goal of the year.
Yeah, it's always at the top of the box, always just a wonder strike. And yeah, that would be definitely thankful or helpful to not see that this weekend. The Loons most likely, from the sounds of it, from Brian Schmetzer's midweek availability, will not see Pedro de la Vega, who's been dealing with some hamstring issues. He's been getting a little bit more practice time lately, according to Schmetzer, but he wants to see him get, I think, 2 weeks is what he said, of consistent practice, and it doesn't seem like that's happened quite yet for the young player that they brought in and who lit the league on fire for a little bit there before his injury and looked like he was going to be a key player in Seattle's offense, but he just hasn't been able to stay healthy this season. So the Loons likely will not see him this weekend. Any final thoughts on this match before we get into our predictions for the week?
No, I just think that's the other thing. We're talking about a big rival, a team that, has had a lot of success in MLS. I think, they did transition out. De La Vega is this amazing story because I think they thought he would be the replacement for Lodeiro.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it felt like it was time for Lodeiro to move on and for Seattle to transition. But certainly now with De La Vega being out for so long, I think that's really hit them hard in terms of, how they're going to kind of usher in post Lodeiro era. And it hasn't gone as well as I think they planned.
Yeah, I'm not going to make any predictions about the game, but I will say that if I was the Seattle Sounders, there's no team I would want coming to town more than Minnesota United, just based on the history. And we've asked Eric Ramsey a lot of times about what do you know about this team. He sort of come in, he's sort of learning on the fly. Manny, I don't know what you guys have told him about Seattle, but if I had been in charge of Minnesota United, I would have said, listen, nobody tell him anything about Seattle. Tell him Minnesota's never played Seattle before. Tell him this is the first game ever between the Sounders and the Loons. They're an expansion team. This is never, the schedule just didn't work out. Just tell him nothing. I want him to know nothing about it at all.
Going with no preconceived notions about who Seattle
absolutely are. Nothing. Don't tell him, don't show him a picture of the stadium. Take away his internet access for the week. Just, make sure he knows nothing.
John, is this a fair correlation between the Twins and the Yankees?
It is very Twins and Yankees-esque in the sense that the teams are in the same league and just based on pure chance, it would be different. But the Twins are now 2 and 1,003 over the course of my lifetime against the New York Yankees. It's not possible. It's not possible for it to be that way. If you put the St. Paul Saints against the Yankees, you would expect them to have the same record as the Twins do against the Yankees. And yet, every time, I have learned as a Minnesota Twins fan that when the Twins are playing the Yankees, doesn't matter if it's the playoffs, doesn't matter if it's the regular season, find something else to do with your time.
I think there's an excellent correlation there, Manny. That's an excellent comparison. Just how,
Yeah, it's just a weird thing about sports too. Like it's hard to explain, but it's there now and it's real. I do think I like John's plan with Eric of letting him out Seattle's expansion team, but I do think our club needs to, change history, change the course. Start this weekend. Why not?
I'm gathering, John, based off of how you talk about soccer and how you would kind of set up your teams. Your Football Manager saves, if you ever play that game, have to just be wild.
No, if I played Football Manager, I would no longer have a wife, children, and anything like that. It would just be what you can already argue is a downward spiral, but it would be accelerated. Same thing as if betting was legal. It would just be like the only thing, if they ever pass sports betting in Minnesota, it's going to be like, well, whose couch will I have to live on now? Because this is just, it's bad news. So Football Man, it's like heroin. You not even once, can't touch it. Gotta stay away.
Speaking of
Speaking of
life
heroin,
and staying married, is it not going to be the best month coming up when you wake up, you're watching European games, then you've got Copa America, then you got MLS? Like,
yep.
I don't know. It's going to be one of the best months of soccer for TV watching ever.
Wake up in the morning, watch 3 Euro games.
Yep.
In the afternoon, you get Copa America, and then on the weekends, you get MLS. This is an excellent month.
Yeah, I don't think my kids will hear this podcast, but if you do, kids, I'll see you in July. Daddy's busy. Daddy's got stuff to do.
I'm just glad I'll have live sports to put on during the day while I work from home now. This would be just excellent to have that. It would be awesome. So let's jump into our preview section for the week, or our prediction segment, excuse me. Manny, we've got Friday night soccer again.
We need it.
It absolutely delivered last time. And this one's setting up to absolutely deliver again. New York City FC hosting Columbus Crew on a baseball field. What could go wrong here, Manny?
I mean, it's just
other than the baseball field.
Yeah, I'm just gonna blank it out because they're gonna have one of the best stadiums and the best markets off the 15 minutes from Manhattan in a couple of years. So if we could just fast forward to that right away, I'd rather have that. But great game. I mean, wow, this is gonna be two teams that are playing some good soccer and quality sides. So very much looking forward to it. Very much so. And I'm gonna go with NYCFC.
Oh, I like it. John?
I'm going to go with a draw, but I just want to say that all Friday night games, to lean into the MLS history, all Friday night games should always be on Unimas only, and only in Spanish. You have to learn Spanish to watch Friday night soccer in MLS.
There's a poll from a couple of years ago. I love it. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Who'd you say, John?
I said draw. Because I'm a coward.
No, that's fair. Is it like 0-0 draw? Exciting draw?
In order to not be a coward, I'm going to say 3-3 draw.
I love it. Right. That's some excellent Friday night soccer on hand.
It'll be 3-0 at halftime and 3-3 at full time.
Oh man, excellent stuff. I'm thinking Columbus get the win here. They want to bounce back. They don't have food poisoning this time, so they won't be spending half the time in the bathroom and the rest on the pitch. So I think Columbus will pull out a road win here in Yankee Stadium. The next game I want to look at, Philadelphia, Miami. Miami will be missing a number of key players due to Copa America call-ups. Philadelphia looking to bounce back after a poor run of form. I think it's 3 draws and just 1 win and 1 loss in their last 5. Miami obviously have been Miami this season. We know what they've been. This one in Philadelphia, John, your prediction here.
Well, I think the funniest MLS story of the year was so far this year. I don't want to say it'll be the funniest story of the year, but the funniest story for me so far was Miami going to Vancouver, refusing to bring any of their big names because it's so far from Miami to Vancouver, and winning anyway. So now they're missing a bunch of big names again because of summer soccer. And so I think Miami wins in Philadelphia.
Okay. Manny?
I got Philadelphia. I think this is their turnaround game for them to kind of get a gritty win and get back on track, at least at home. So
Philadelphia 1-4-3 at home this season. Probably should have led off with that one instead of saving it until I make the prediction and say Miami's going to win on the road here.
Just for perspective, that's just I think nobody would have predicted that.
No, absolutely not.
Home record for Philly, given what they've been playing the last couple of years.
Yeah. Last match I want to highlight: Orlando City hosting LAFC this weekend. Orlando City struggling this season, sitting 11th place in the East. LAFC, 2nd place in the Western Conference. This one in Orlando, Manny.
Yeah, I'm going to go with LAFC. I mean, I think they have turned a corner defensively and really put the screws in terms of letting Denny Bouanga kind of, be their offense. So,
John?
I'm gonna pick LAFC too, but I think somehow it's gonna be because of a mistake by Orlando's goalkeeper. I think maybe like a punt that hits a defender in the butt and rebounds into the net or something like that. That's been Orlando City's season this year. It's just things going wrong.
Did Galese get called up, or is he still in market?
I don't know the answer to that, but
okay. Right.
What country is he from?
Peru, I believe.
They really are struggling that much for goalkeepers in Peru?
He's had a history of being good.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, this season it's been not so great, but he's had a history.
It's fun being on the show because you're kind of deferring, and then John just goes in and just gut punches a player. It's just
my only goal being on this podcast is to make Manny laugh at something he knows he's not supposed to laugh at. That's all I want.
You're just giving some body blows, but I
really need you to live stream you playing Football Manager. I need to see what this looks like, John. I really do.
Just absolutely disheveled, like Mr. Burns in the Simpsons episode where he's imitating I've forgotten the guy, Leonardo DiCaprio in The Aviator. What's that guy? Howard Hughes.
Yeah.
Full Howard Hughes mode is what it would look like.
Okay, well, I don't want to see that. I just want to see what the save ends up looking like. Just want to see it and how you talk about it. It'd be interesting. I think I'm going an LAFC win here as well. Just Orlando, just a comedy of errors this season. Haven't been good. LAFC in form, one of the most informed teams in the league. A number of wins in a row. They are on a heck of a streak for them. But yeah, we'll have an exciting game this weekend against Seattle. That one at 9:00, so a late one. 9:30 p.m. Kickoff. 9 p.m. pre-match show with Dan Terra and myself on 1500 ESPN. Where can we find you this week, John?
You can find me for a little bit longer at the Star Tribune, then you can find me next week when I'm subbing in for the inimitable Andy Greeter for the Pioneer Press next week. So switching over midstream next week.
There you go. All right, good stuff. We'll look forward to it. Loons fans, read his stuff wherever he's writing, either at the Star Tribune, his own website.
Try to find me.
Yeah,
I'll be in the basement playing Football Manager with only Jonathan watching me live stream it.
Oh man, I am excited for this. We're gonna make this happen. I'm gonna make this happen. Manny, we'll talk to you next week right back here on this podcast.
Cheers, guys. Thank you. Pleasure.
Loons fans, thanks for tuning in. Thanks to the production staff, Kyle Hayward, Grace Dearson, and Evan Entler for putting this on. Loons fans, we'll talk to you next week.